I'm Chris Gurnett. I'm a professor of neurology at Washington University in St. Louis, and I'm also the co-director of the Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities Research Center. And my partner in crime here, let Anna introduce herself.
Yeah, I'm Anna Abaki, and I am the program manager of the Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities Research Center here at WashU. I'm also a psychometrician and clinical research specialist for the center.
We're going to talk just about 10, 15 minutes, and there's really three parts of this. The first is really to tell you what is the Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities Research Center. And then second, I'm going to tell you some of the great stories that have come out and some of the successes in what we now understand about some of these conditions. And then third, we'll talk really about community engagement and how you may be able to work with us and be partners with us as we understand and do this research. So really the goal of our intellectual and developmental disabilities research is to track and trace the genetic and environmental disruptions of human brain and mind development at their origins, all the way from the gene to the cell, all the way through how people behave. We are one of 15 centers in the country that are funded by the National Institutes of Health. So we appreciate the federal dollars that have helped us to be able to support not just what we do in the center, but really the goal of the center is to support all of the researchers at Washington University and to partner with researchers across the country to make this work much more impactful. Next slide.
Yeah, so we have three cores in the center. The first core is the clinical translational core. And this core is to support natural history studies and clinical trial studies of neurodevelopmental disorders. So we offer scientists study coordination, recruitment support, and standardized assessments. So some of the assessments that might be familiar to many of you are the ADOS, the Autism Diagnostic Observation Schedule, the Autism Diagnostic Interview, which is commonly used to assess autism, and then the Vineland Adaptive Behavioral Scale, which is used to assess adaptive functioning, and then a variety of cognitive assessments from infancy to adulthood. Our second core is our model systems core. So our model systems core includes teams of scientists looking at IDD at the cellular level using cross species models to understand neural pathways of developmental disorders. So these methods allow for the manipulation of the genome to discover treatments for developmental disorders and IDD. And then our third core, the developmental neuroimaging core, includes teams of scientists that use both magnetic resonance imaging or MRIs and diffuse optical tomography to assess the brain in infants through adulthood. So this can include like wearable devices that can allow patients to be mobile while being assessed. It also can include assess types of imaging that we can assess animals or humans with, and we have the teams that work with individuals that are coming in have expertise in infancy through adulthood. We have technicians who run the scanners that are called baby whisperers who can get an MRI while babies are sleeping. So it is very non-invasive. We also have the diffuse optical tomography allows for an alternative method to imaging the brain in individuals who aren't able to be assessed with an MRI safely. For example, like patients who have cochlear implants.
Great. So some of the stories and work that have come out of our IDDRC are research studies that have allowed us to really identify what parts of the brain do different things. And this has been able to help us identify regions that control emotion, control language, and a lot more precision from an imaging study than it has ever been done before. We also work closely with acquired causes of cognitive disability, including severe head trauma and children who end up in the ICU and have lots of complications. And so we do what we can to identify the ways we can improve outcomes for children who are critically ill in the hospital. Next slide. One of the studies that I was involved with about 5 years ago during COVID was to be able to implement and take a diagnostic test for COVID-19 that was developed at Washington University and be able to take it out into our community, into the special school district of St. Louis County, where we did weekly surveillance testing on many of the staff and teachers at these schools, as well as students, which really allowed them to stay open and be able to continue to provide the educational services during the first year or two of the pandemic. And so we have guidelines and we have advice now in case there's another pandemic around the corner, or maybe we'll be able to respond better based on the work that happened right in our community from more than, thousands of people who contributed out in the community to this research. And then the last story I'll tell you about is this is Dr. Nico Dozenbach, and you can see his bright pink cast. And he does a lot of the neuroimaging studies. In fact, I think he's sitting in one of the MRI scanners. But he was really curious as to what happens when you immobilize a limb. And we know that kids that have cerebral palsy, one of the treatments now is to immobilize the good arm. So how quickly does the remodeling of the brain function and structures take place after you immobilize a limb? And so this has lots of implications for understanding the best therapy for people that have motor disabilities. Next slide. So one of the projects of the national IDDRC network, which is these 15 networks across the country, is that we've been partnering with families who get a genetic diagnosis, sometimes where it's not clear whether they truly have a condition or not. And so we have a brain gene registry that's linking patients up and doing work with much more deeply phenotyped and characterized the physical and developmental phenotypes for the children who have these genetic conditions. And we are then able to return some of that information back to families. This is an ongoing problem. We know that a lot of people have genetic testing done now, and sometimes the results are not so clear. And rather than having those people uncertain about where they fall, we're using that as an opportunity to try to find more information about some of the genetic changes that can contribute to intellectual and developmental disabilities and autism. This is an ongoing study. And like all registries, we want to do this in a safe manner where data is safe and secure. If people are interested, they can certainly reach out to Anna or myself. We are still recruiting for this study because we know that there are a lot of people out there who still need more information about why, the causes of developmental disabilities. Next slide. And the last study that I'll highlight is work that I did with one of our younger trainees, as well as Joy Ballsbury, who's a faculty member in the Department of Neurology. We really, because we know that a lot of intellectual developmental disabilities is due to genetic conditions, we know that access to genetic testing is not equal around our community. Not everyone has access to this expensive test or to the investigators and to clinicians who have expertise with this testing. And unfortunately, we were able to confirm that there are significant barriers. And so there's a lot fewer Black patients who have genetic testing, even in our clinics in St. Louis where we are very, very interested in trying to level the playing field. And so this study was able to allow us to get a genetic counselor who's now dedicated to our clinic and dedicated in trying to find all the different ways that we can get people this important testing. Next slide.
Yeah. So this is one story of how family groups have partnered with scientists in the IDDRC. So this program started with when a gene disruption was discovered in the MIT1L gene in a child in one of our autism clinical centers. So the family of this individual decided that they wanted to further study this gene, and they gathered local philanthropic funds, and then they partnered with scientists at our IDDRC. And the IDDRC scientists were able to use these pilot funds to develop mice and human neurons carrying the same gene disruption that that was discovered in this individual. The data generated from the pilot study resulted in the launch of major projects that were NIH funded and focused on the role of the MIT1L gene in brain development. And these resources have now offered a platform for screening new RNA therapeutics. And we've also annually partnered with the MIT1L Family Group and other advocacy organizations to learn more about how families are impacted by this and to help inform our research priorities in this area. So this is just a picture of the most recent MIT1L Family Day here on campus. So other events that are open to the public here are we offer a hands-on evening with WashU investigators in the IDDRC. The purpose of this is to bring together families, clinicians, scientists, and students who are studying IDD or interested in the causes and treatments of IDD. So we held this in the fall last year, and we had over 150 people come, enhancing many of our longstanding collaborations with community partners. We offer several IDDRC-sponsored events throughout the year, including this Cerebral Palsy Family Day, which is actually this month, and many other family groups. We are very open to partnering with families and bringing family groups to fruition here through the IDDRC. So there is a Rare Disease Day in February, and we invite families to attend, professionals to attend. It's open to the public. Rett Spectrum Conference is in October each year. And we partner with the annual Association for Aging with Developmental Disabilities Conference to sponsor that event, as well as research data blitz, where families are always welcome to join that. That is where our clinicians and scientists come together to talk about ways that we can improve collaborations and promote new research here at the university. These are also some links that may be of interest. So this is our YouTube channel. You can subscribe to that and get updates from our center. We also have a patient and family page where we highlight news from the center that may be of interest to families. Many of our research studies are published here. You can join our Friends of the IDDRC email. There is a survey where you can just go on and sign up for that, and we will include you in our listserv. And also, I wanted to talk briefly about the Community Advisory Board. If anyone is interested in helping us from the family perspective, learning more about how we can improve our methods for research, how we can represent families through our research. There is an application online if you're interested in becoming a community advisor for our center. WashU also offers career opportunities for individuals with disabilities. And this is also a link to our neurology and our child and adolescent psychiatry pages.
And I'll just comment that a lot of the work from our IDDRC happens in the brand new building that some of you may have been able to see from Interstate 64 that goes right through the city, the very large neuroscience research building, which is really the largest neuroscience research building in the country. Just opened last year, and this is where a lot of the science happens.
So a quick clarification, somebody asked if you also do research on children whose intellectual disability is a result of in utero drug exposure. Are you only looking at the genetic variables?
No, we definitely have investigators who are very interested in all of the environmental exposures, including drugs that can contribute to changes in neurodevelopment. Along that line, we've had investigators that are studying Zika virus. Some of us may have forgotten about that, but about 5 or 6 years ago, I think right before the pandemic, if I have the timing right, there were kids born with microcephaly more in South and Central America, likely due to this virus. And so we've been very interested in understanding how that happens and why it happens. And I think now everyone's interested in why did it happen for a year and then it kind of went away.
Yeah, interesting. I'd forgotten about that till you said it.
Yeah.
We had 2 pre-submitted questions, so I want to go ahead and ask those. The first one was about helping older children with information processing delays. Do you have any evidence that shows of some specific treatment or activity would be useful in that area?
I think that my understanding of the research on this is to keep the individual engaged as much as possible. So I think there are many organizations in St. Louis that are very helpful for social activities after the age of 18, after, I'm assuming this, we're talking about after high school. So I think social involvement is very important at that stage. And staying engaged in activities as well as any type of cognitive activities that can be challenging to and developmentally appropriate to the individual, including career placement.
Yeah, I will say, the research on the transition from pediatric to adulthood and looking at cognition in older adults who have developmental disabilities is something that we will hopefully see more research in that, because it's an area that a lot of families have on their mind, and we just need more researchers who are interested in understanding that better. I will say we do quite a bit of work on Down syndrome, and there have been some studies on something called Down syndrome regression syndrome. And the IDDRC network is doing and supporting clinical trials to use some immune modulators for that regression syndrome. So these questions all fit very well with the mission of the IDDRC.
That's exciting to hear. That's always really challenging when that happens to an individual. While you're saying that, there's some questions about how you all collaborate with other IDDRCs. What's the closest one? And do you all have an information sharing collaborative kind of environment?
Yeah, that's a great question. So our closest IDDRC is in Nashville. Otherwise, I'm trying to think. The University of Iowa also has one.
Yeah.
But a lot of them are on the East and West coasts. We know the patients, especially with rare disease, are often scattered around the country. So having a network is really, really important. Funding also, there's never enough funding to do the work that we all want and need to do. So anytime we can leverage the expertise that one investigator or one center has and apply it across across all of our institutes is more helpful. So we work very closely across the network. And I think as we're moving into more clinical trials of really trying to systematically understand what are some of the best behavioral approaches, treatment approaches, we'll have to do that more as a network. So that's going to be really increasingly important.
That kind of leads into another question, which was asking about how does the work you do, the research you do, impact national policies and practices? Is there a funnel for your information to go to, obviously through National Institute of Health? How do they use that to create protocols?
Definitely. So that's, one of the reasons we were excited to have this opportunity to talk with people is that, in order to have federal funding, we really have to tell people about the success stories and the importance of the work that we're doing. And so we definitely hope that it informs policy and that we need to change. There's another organization called the National Organization for Rare Disease, or NORD, and we're working with them to spread the word on these conditions being more challenging to study than hypertension or heart disease, where there are hundreds of thousands of patients even within a state. When we have rare disease patients across the country, we need different tools, and we need better networking.
Yeah, it's exciting for me to see the family support opportunities you provide. I spoke at a national conference for rare diseases once, and to be able to see those families come together and see someone else that understands their experience, and having a diagnosis like that often means that you're not really sure what to expect. So finding other people that have had those experiences, it's just invaluable. So that's a really cool part of what you shared with us today that I'm excited about. I did want to ask, we talked a little bit about in utero exposure. What about, what's the implication of your work with pharmacology? We have been helping the people we support now get gene testing to see how their medication is absorbed into their body. Have you seen connections to medications from the work you do?
Yeah, that's an area where we need a lot more research. And I think particularly with a lot of the information and data that's in the health records now, there's a new term called the learning healthcare system. And I think a lot of us clinicians think about how do we use existing data that's already in there, where we know what drugs have been tried and maybe how long they were tried. We probably can tell a lot about side effects from pulling that data from the health record. Pharmacogenetics, which is how do individual variants in your genome affect how you metabolize drugs. There's still more linking that we need to do to link up people's genetic data to the health record data. So I think we could do a lot better predicting of who's going to have a side effect and who we should or shouldn't use a medicine for. So I'm all in favor of expanding how we use genetic data and data that's already in the health system.
Yeah, I love that. I wonder how AI will play into that.
There's already a big push at Washington University to implement the AI platform in research activities, and we're hoping to do that with our IDDRC.
Exciting and challenging in a lot of ways, I'm sure. Somebody wanted to know if you have continued to work with SSD, Special School District, in other capacities.
We do.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Anna.
Yeah, I was going to say we're in autism and developmental disabilities monitoring network site here. And one of the PIs here leads this study and monitoring that for the St. Louis metro area and works closely with Special School District on that aspect. They're also working on prevalence for CP in the schools, cerebral palsy. And yeah.
Interesting. Well, that's good. We've got great resources here. It's good to see them talk to each other. So that leads me to ask, someone wants to know, how can our families get involved in these studies? Is one of the links in the last page the best way for them to find out about upcoming opportunities?
Yeah, I think visiting the website and the patient and family page, and as well as joining our YouTube channel and our newsletter. We frequently share information about getting involved with research studies or coming to events on campus. So
Yeah,
Very
and
good.
I would say, reach out to us. We very much want to know what what the public and what the community feels are the highest priorities. And if we can help connect you with a scientist who has some of the same shared interests and could help address some of the questions you have, we are more than happy to help be those facilitators.
Fantastic. We have three more questions. So I'm going to try and get through those. When an IDD person is dually diagnosed with a genetic or neuro abnormality and autism, how do you approach the study? Is the genetic condition considered the precedence and then the autism a secondary diagnosis? And are these individuals still able to participate in studies?
Absolutely. We know that so many people have a dual diagnosis. All of these traits, as you can imagine. I mean, how we think and learn is a trait. And people think differently. Some of the genetic conditions can really override some of those other factors. But we also know in some families, even with the same genetic condition, there can be a child with ID or cognitive impairment in a child with autism, and they have the same underlying genetic condition. It just manifests differently depending on the environment and the genetic background of that child. So it makes it complicated to do the research that we're doing, but we try to do it by collecting all of that information and integrating it. 5 years from now, we should have a lot more answers to that, but all of our work, for the most part, we're very inclusive in who we recruit depending on the study. But we're very, very interested in, and a lot of us think more of a kind of really broad tent where everyone fits under that tent. We all may be different places, but it's usually a broad, very broad group of people that we want to help.
Fantastic. That takes me back to one of the pre-submitted questions that I failed to ask, which was about 15-year-old twins born with EEC syndrome, one of whom has IDD and autism and one who does not. And they wondered how rare that was to have twins and the different profile.
Yeah, I mean, I think it speaks to how individual each of us are. And even identical twins sometimes can have very different personalities and cognition and autistic kind of quantitative traits. I mean, the fun part is that's what makes everyone so individual and wonderful. But it makes it harder to study and harder to predict when parents will ask, what's my kid going to look like when they're in kindergarten? And I usually say, only your child will be able to show us what they look like when they're in kindergarten.
Yeah, yeah. That's, I think we all experience that in our work with people with disabilities. Everybody is so unique. It's good to know that you continue to work with that broad group of folks. I want to make sure I get this question right, and I don't know that I fully understand, but we had someone ask about whether when they come to your center to do a study or to participate in something, can you use an existing MRI that's already been performed, or do they have to start from square one?
It depends on the research study. Some research studies are looking at brand new neuroimaging methods that have never been studied before. And so we would definitely encourage you to see what studies are available. And if any of them you qualify, we'd love to figure out how to make that happen for you. In some of the work that I do more on understanding genetics, often then we want that existing data. We don't want to collect it again. We would definitely be interested in what you already know about your child, including their imaging.
Fantastic. This is the last question I have, which I love. We're going to go all the way back to the beginning of your presentation with the awesome pediatric imaging slide. I said, are those headbands comfortable with all the wires coming out? It looks intense, but makes me want to check it out myself. And I have to say, I thought the same thing.
I've had it on my head, so I can talk about it. It is a nice cap that fits snugly on the head, and really, it is it's not very uncomfortable to wear. So, uh, I would say most of the kids are able to tolerate it and actually have fun doing that part of the research.
They look
They
pretty
watch
pleased with
videos
themselves.
and they do They watch videos on the screen, and
Yeah,
it
fantastic.
looks a little more intimidating than it is, I think.
I know the pictures of the kids you had on the slide, they all looked like they thought they were pretty
Yeah.
cool. So
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to slip one of those on myself. Well, I really appreciate your time today. I've learned so much more about what you all are doing. I will come and see the new building because it sounds amazing. Is there anything you want to leave our audience with?
I would just say, well, you know, that we definitely would welcome any of you to reach out to us if you have questions about the research that we're doing or a priority area that you're interested in. And we will be hosting again more community-facing events, and we'd love to see you in person. And we can help make you with, you know, a scientist who may be able to really help move whatever your question is forward.
Can't ask.
Yeah, and I would just add that many of our research studies can be an avenue for getting standardized assessments that you can bring back to your physician if you are seeking a diagnosis or in that process of getting a diagnosis. That can be an avenue for uh, receiving those assessments.
That's good to know, everybody, because there could be as much of as a 6-month wait list to go into the community to get an ADOS assessment. So do some good for your fellow man and get something in return that you really need anyway. So that's excellent advice, both of you. I hope that people take advantage and go check out the things that are available to collaborate and work together to understand better what's going on with all the folks we love with IDD.